Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's live stream. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and I hope everyone had a safe and productive week. From the title, you can see we're going to be delving into a pretty serious conversation tonight. Um, so I hope everyone is ready for some serious dialogue on the topic. We will be discussing, we'll be going a little bit into detail about the New Zealand terror attack. And the premise of this particular live stream is that I wanted to really focus on the denial of white male terror here in the United States and abroad. I think that this is an issue that everyone is aware of, but for some particular reason, it's not being, in my opinion, it's not being demonized to the degree that it should be. Um, we've heard of several instances of what I feel are terror attacks that have been carried out by white male extremists who have attached themselves to white supremacy and white supremacist organizations. And I feel as if we're not doing this situation any justice after the continual denial of what this is being brushed under the rug. This is not lone wolf operations. These are not mentally ill people. This is terror. This is terror attacks, and I feel that we need to properly address them as such. Um, this week, there was a terror attack in New Zealand, and it's being reported that I believe 50 people lost their lives in this terror attack. And the media is doing what they usually do. They're trying to present this as something else than what it is. There's a few media outlets that have been referring to it as terror, as they should. I believe that's putting it in its proper context because, as I stated, these are terrorist attacks. A mosque was attacked, and people have been harmed by this. People have been killed, and I feel that we need to start calling this stuff what it is. This is something that has been ongoing for centuries, if we're going to be honest about it. And in more recent times, we're seeing this coming to the forefront more and more daily. A lot of people are saying that this is because of the President Trump, presidency. And I mean, I guess to a certain degree it is, but in my opinion, this can't be placed solely on the back of President Trump. This is something that has been going on long before Trump was even in the nomination to become president. And just reducing this down to a Trump presidency to me states that people actually feel that once Trump is no longer president, that this is somehow just going to go away. And for us that have been paying attention to what is actually happening in the world, we know that President Trump, is not the main cause of this. This is something that has been going on long before he became president. So I feel it's very negligent for people to try to attach President Trump to this. This is an extreme case of denial of what we're really dealing with in this country and abroad as it relates to white supremacy and white male terror. Um, it's people, they want to deny this, and we're not doing ourselves any justice by continuing to deny this for what it is. Now, this guy who decided he was going to go ahead and take lives in the name of white supremacy is Brenton Harrison Tarrant, if I'm saying his name correctly. He's from Australia. And the reason why we're speaking of this situation that happened, although it didn't happen here in the United States, I think that it ties into a bigger and more sinister thing that is happening here in the United States and abroad. Um, if anyone can remember Charlottesville, where a young lady was killed there, and what they referred to themselves as white nationalists. And I think that we try to separate white nationalists from white supremacy. it's all under the same umbrella. These people, they're more outwardly aggressive, but it all ties into that same belief system. And ignoring this and not looking at it in its proper context is causing great harm to many people. There has been, excuse me, there has been many instances of school shootings, church shootings, shootings in movie theaters. The list goes on and on and on of these attacks. And I feel that the negligence of the media and even our sitting president, I will say, because although I don't feel that President Trump is responsible for these attacks, as people like to try to attach him to these attacks and say that he's solely responsible for this because of his rhetoric. Um, Although I don't feel that the blame can solely be placed on President Trump, I feel as if his refusal to call this out for what it is, in a way, does embolden these individuals that we've seen doing this stuff recently. I feel that they feel that to a certain extent that he's on their side, because if you can remember, after the Charlottesville attack, he basically made an affirmative statement that there were fine people on both ends of that situation. And in my opinion, what that did was it green lighted some of these individuals to say, okay, we're not going to be demonized in the media as we should be. We can go ahead and further our agenda. And as we can see, these attacks have had an uptake after Charlottesville. It hasn't gotten any better. And I feel that that's because on the national stage, these attacks have not been demonized as they should be by the media or the public, in my opinion. Now, you have some individuals that call this out, but for the most part, we kind of brush this under the rug, and people try to paint these people as mentally ill individuals or lone wolves. No, these attacks are coming out of these groups that many people are involved with. So to try to reduce this down to, someone being mentally ill or being a loner or being on their own, that is not doing the situation any justice, because as we can see, people are losing their lives behind these attacks. And these attacks are massive attacks. So I feel like we need to begin to call this out for what it is. It is terror. It needs to be identified as such. And these groups need to be deemed as terrorist groups by the FBI, because that's exactly what they are. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of an article about the terror attack so we can kind of get, insight on what this man's mindset was and what he attached himself to. So give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the article, and I'm going to read some of it so we can get an idea of what it is that this man was thinking and why he carried out this attack. Okay, and this article is coming to us courtesy of USA Today. And it says, violent terrorist who is the white supremacist suspected in New Zealand mosque shootings. Brenton Tarrant was charged Saturday with murder in the terrorist attack shootings at two mosques in the New Zealand city of Christchurch that killed at least 50 people. He live streamed his own rampage, the deadliest massacre in the nation's history. Tarrant is a 28-year-old white male with white supremacist views. He captured Friday's deadly incident at Masjid Al-Noor Mosque in a 17-minute video taken on a helmet camera. Here's what we know about him. Tarrant, 28, was born in nearby Australia, the country's Prime Minister Scott Morrison confirmed. According to the New Zealand Herald, Morrison called Tarrant an extremist, white-ring, violent terrorist. Media reports have found that Tarrant is from Grafton, a town of around 19,000 people in New South Wales, Australia. Tarrant is the author of a more than 70-page anti-immigrant manifesto called The Great Replacement, which, according to The Guardian, consists of a rant about white genocide and advocates for an atmosphere of fear against Muslims. He posted the document on Twitter before the shooting. His Twitter account has since been disabled. Tarrant refers to himself as just a regular white man. In the document, Tarrant refers to himself as European instead of Australian, and also says he grew up in a low-income working-class family. He wrote that his language, culture, political beliefs, philosophical beliefs, and identity are all European, and most importantly, my blood is European. He stated, I am just a regular white man from a regular family who decided to take a stand to ensure a future for my people. He says his parents are of Scottish, Irish, and English stock. I had a regular childhood without any great issues. So as we can see in this article, Tarrant is basically stating that he took a stand for his people and that he didn't have any issues, any great issues growing up in his childhood. And I want to point that out because a lot of times when these incidents take place, the first thing that the media will do is they will refer to the individual. For some reason, they try to paint the individual as being mentally ill and having, some type of situation happen to them in their childhood, which would warrant them doing what they're doing. And as we can see in that little piece that I just read, Terrence stated that he had a pretty normal and regular childhood, and he didn't have many great issues that he faced in his childhood. This attack was carried out in the name of white supremacy and preservation of the white race. And honestly, this is just completely ridiculous. And I want to say this. When these white supremacists refer to what is going on in the world today as white genocide, what they really mean is diversity. These people do not believe in diversity. They don't believe that a world should exist where the white race is not supreme over all other people. And this is a problem. And the continual denial of this is going to this is going to create bigger issues, and it's going to excuse me, it is going to give these people that are carrying out these terror attacks, it's going to give them more ammunition to continue doing what they're doing. This needs to be denounced all across the world internationally, because another thing that the media is covering up in this situation is that Tarrant admitted that he was inspired by individuals in the United States that he saw carrying out these forms of terror. And we should all be on alert about this, because these people are very serious about what they're doing. And they don't really have any incentive to stop doing what they're doing right now. So, I really feel as if not calling this stuff out is hurting us. This this continual push by the media to protect white men by all means, no matter what they're doing, it is causing people their lives, and this is something that needs to be stopped. These terror attacks need to be called what they are, and there needs to be stiff and harsh punishments for these crimes. Okay, there is someone that is continually commenting in the comment section, and they've left about in the chat. They've left about 6 comments. I'm going to attempt to read some of these comments, and this person is Vincere Otmari, if I'm saying that correctly. Oh boy, and I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. You should not paint with such a broad brush. Nothing about Chris Cantwell, Jason Kessler, and Mike Enoch was right. The whole Unite the Right rally that happened in Charlottesville was a setup being used to paint the right as a bunch of racists. So it is reprehensible for anyone to promote or commit violence in the name of one's race or region. Okay, Vincere, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm not painting with a broad brush. I am calling out white extremist groups and white supremacists for what they are doing. So if you are not a white supremacist or a white extremist, then you should not feel attacked by what I'm saying because it does not apply to you. The problem with these white extremists and these white terrorist groups is that people are allowing this to go unchecked. The government is allowing this to go unchecked. There has been no mass scale campaign that I have seen. And if someone has seen it, you can post a link in the chat to provide me with that information. But for many of us, we have not seen a wide scale campaign against this hatred, this racism, and these terrorist attacks in the name of white supremacy and white extremism. We have not seen this. Even our very own president tried to defend some of these people when that attack in Charlottesville occurred. So I think that is very dishonest of you, Vincere, to pretend as if this is not happening, to pretend as if people are not trying to cover for these guys. And recently, Ben Shapiro, I don't know how many people are familiar with Ben Shapiro. He has a very strong viewpoint of constantly trying to defend these white supremacists and white extremist groups. He was on Twitter asking people to not post the manifesto, to not give this guy attention, to not give these people attention. And that's the issue. We have not been giving these situations the proper attention. And what Ben Shapiro was attempting to do was he was attempting to cover this up because people do not like for these individuals to write these manifestos and let the rest of us know what these guys are really thinking. These guys feel that they're under attack. Like I said, they're not proponents of diversity. They do not want to see a world in which white supremacy is not the rule of the world. And we have to deal with that. There is no time for this continual denial of this. This is really happening. This is, and like I said, it's causing people their lives. We can't continue to allow this stuff to go unchecked because any of us could be a victim of these attacks. So, people such as Ben Shapiro, he needs to be denounced as well. Because for you to ask people to not post this information and to not get this stuff out here, why are you so adamant, Ben Shapiro, on helping these guys to have this stuff covered up? I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit more of the comments. Vincere says, the fact is that most Trump supporters are civic nationalists, not ethnic nationalists. It doesn't really matter if they're civic nationalists or ethnic nationalists. The point is that we don't have time to sit here and cherry pick what type of extremists they are or any of that. The bottom line is that they are extremists. And not all of them are extremists. Let's be honest about that. There are closeted people that secretly support this stuff. And, until the law does something about this and identify these people for who they are, I don't see them having any incentives to change what they're doing. There is only so much that we can do about the ones that, hide their views. But if a strong message is sent to those that, if a strong message is sent to those that, have taken the stance to come out and identify themselves as such, they need to be prosecuted to the furthest extent of the law. They need to be put on the terror watch list. And they need to be identified as terrorists as if they were someone of a different background, because time and time again, we see different ethnic groups, particular Middle Eastern ethnic groups. If they dare to do something like this, they're going to be extremely identified as a terrorist. We don't have the time to continue to paint these people as something that they're not. They are terrorists, and that's what they are, and that's what they should be identified as. Vincere says, agreed, white supremacy should be called out. More so than white supremacy being called out, something needs to be done about it. And I know this may sound, it may sound weird to individuals that state, excuse me, that state that the country was built on white supremacy, and how in the world do we ever expect for America to exist without white supremacy? Although those points are valid, in the immediate, what we're up against right now, it needs to be dealt with expeditiously and immediately. Those other things, they need to be discussed and they need to be talked about as, the system within itself that breeds these people. That, that is something that needs to be discussed. However, when we're dealing with these situations of this extreme violence that are that's killing people, we need to get this stuff called out, and we need to have, like I said, the presidents on an international level need to get some resolutions together quickly to denounce this stuff and to to handle this. How many more people need to lose their lives before this is called out for what it is? We cannot continue to allow this to happen. And people that like to state that everyone can't be painted with a broad brush, although that is true, if you're complacent with what is going on, you cannot expect to not be at least suspected to be okay with this. This stuff is not being called out properly and is not being handled properly. As I stated, more so than being called out, it needs to be dealt with, and there needs to be penalties under the law for this stuff. Hey, bye, Melanin. Hey, how are you? And thank you for joining us. Vincere commented again. He says, I need to do research on Mike Enoch and Jason Kessler. Really, will you find there is more to the story? I plan to, I've done some research on it, and I plan to do more research on it. However, there's always more to the story. I'm not naive to that fact. There is always more to the story. However, there's no way for us to be able to identify each and every one of these underground white supremacist terror organizations. So for the people that are willing to make the sacrifice for these groups and come out and push themselves into the forefront and say, hey, I'm doing this in the name of white supremacy. I'm doing this to preserve my race, which I find to be completely ridiculous, because there is no mass genocide going on against the white race. As I stated, those are code words for diversity. These people do not like diversity. They don't want to see a world in which everyone is coexisting. So when they say white genocide, that is exactly what they mean. And also to your point, Vincere, like I said, there's always more to the story, and I agree with that. However, as I stated, this is not getting out of hand. Let me rephrase that. What we're seeing is people that have been existing underground. They are pushing themselves more so to the mainstream now, and since they are taking a stand to come out and come into the mainstream and present themselves to the rest of the world, they need to be immediately demonized. They need to be immediately called out, and there needs to be swift and harsh punishments for the crimes that they are engaging in. We cannot allow this to continue to happen. These terror attacks are going to continue until they are denounced to the furthest extent by all people. You know, we're being bombarded with this stuff, and I think that people are becoming numb to what exactly is going on. And like I said, that is not serving us. That is not serving us very well to continue to deny this stuff. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit more of the article. Give me a moment. Okay, so where I left off was Varant talking about how he was just a regular white man who identified as European and so on and so forth. Okay, so it goes on to state that Varant had been planning this attack for 2 years. So it goes on to say Tarrant described himself as an ethno-nationalist and a fascist in the manifesto. He claims to have planned Friday's attack for 2 years. He stated New Zealand wasn't his original choice as a target, but he had scoped it out for 3 months. Okay, and in addition to the actual shooting, police also defused explosive devices that were found in a car. Tarrant arrived at the mosque in a car with at least 3 guns. On the stereo, he played a song glorifying a Bosnian Serb war criminal. His rifles were covered in white supremacist graffiti. At least 2 rifles used in the shooting, according to the Associated Press, mention Ebba Erkland, an 11-year-old girl killed in a 2007 truck ramming attack in Stockholm by Rahmat Akvi. Rahmat Alavi was a 39-year-old Uzbek man. The number 14 is seen on the gunman's rifles, and it's been reported that it may refer to 14 words, which, according to Southern Poverty Law Center, is a white supremacist slogan linked to Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. ABC has reported that Tarrant worked as a personal trainer at Big River Gym in Grafton from 2009 to 2011 when he traveled to Asia and Europe. He also made income through BitConnect, a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin that he used to help fund his trips. He was described by gym employer as a very dedicated trainer and someone who didn't seem interested in guns. I think someone must have changed him during the years he spent traveling overseas, gym manager Tracy Gray told ABC. Tarrant's father, Rodney Tarrant, died of cancer in 2010 when his son was in high school. Gray, his former employer, said she believes that he has a surviving mother and sister. Okay, I want to stop right there for a minute because what I'm noticing and what I was reading in the article is that this employer of his is doing what I stated a lot of people like to do when these situations occur. They like to try to paint these individuals as someone who was mentally ill, someone who was going through something in their life, because she stated that something must have changed him. But in his manifesto, he stated himself that he had no issues. He had no mental issues. So that argument is dead in the water. What we need to do is we need to stop trying to paint these people as mentally ill. These people are well aware of what they're doing, and all of us have to live in the world with them. So we need to be taking this very, very seriously. As I stated, this guy stated that he was not mentally ill and well aware of what he was doing this in the name of his people, doing this for his people. The continuance of trying to deny that is why we have seen an uptake in these terror attacks. We cannot continue to try to make it seem as if these people exist on a lonely island. They are coming up from these groups. These groups are re-emerging. And in another video, I'm going to go into more into why we're seeing a re-emergence of this. For the purposes of this live, I just want to kind of stick to this particular incident. But yeah, as Vincere was saying in the chat, there's way more people involved in these attacks. There's way more people that stand by these attacks than what we think. And we all need to begin to take this seriously. You know, these people are not existing in some isolated forest somewhere. They are coming out into the mainstream and they are making their presence known. And we are all going to be affected by this if we don't call this out and we don't make sure that something is done to deal with these people. You know, when I was young, I was a communist, then an anarchist, and finally a libertarian before coming to be an eco-fascist. As I stated before, and I'm going to be honest about this, it doesn't really matter to me so much what happened to these people in their childhood. I'm going to be very honest about that, because there are so many people that have faced tragedies in their life. They have gone through things in their childhood, and they're going through things right now. And they're not going out here shooting up churches. They're not going out here shooting up movie theaters. They're not going out here attacking schools. So this whole idea of giving people a pass or feeling sympathetic for these individuals that are harming, in many cases, harming complete strangers, making excuses for them and trying to, trying to make it seem as if we should feel sorry for them. I don't agree with that. I do not feel as if they need to be treated any differently than someone who is not white. And we have to be honest about that, because I don't see any of these other groups that engage in terror. I never get to hear about their childhood, or what someone did to them, or if they were teased in school. We don't get the entire diatribe of what happened to them. They are immediately deemed as terrorists. They are immediately deemed as unsafe for the rest of us. And that's something that needs to happen with these white male extremists. The time for trying to protect them is over. We need to call them out for who they are. Hey, Destiny. It's okay. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. So yeah, Vincere, I see that you're one of the more vocal people in the chat tonight. And, I don't disagree with everything that you're saying. You're making some valid points. But as I was stating, no, the time for making excuses for these people are over. I mean, what is it actually going to take for us to call this out for what it is? As I stated, these are terrorist attacks and they need to be deemed as such. Even if his views change over time, he may have been a good person once before in his life. All of that is irrelevant at the end of the day. What we're dealing with is what's important. We are dealing with extremist, terrorist people that are identifying themselves as white supremacists, and we have to call them out for who they are. The time for making excuses for these people is over. Okay, Vincere, you said agreed. A terrorist is a terrorist. All I am saying is don't paint this person as a conservative Trump supporter, as he is far from being a conservative Trump supporter. I don't recall deeming him as a conservative Trump supporter. I never said that he supported Trump one way or the other. What I did say was that Trump is not calling these people out in the way that he should be calling them out. And whether we want to face it or not, a lot of these people are being emboldened by the fact that they are not being called out by Trump and other heads of state and presidents across the world. These people are not being deemed as what they are, and they are terrorists. I believe that he was charged with murder. Um, and this is a racist terrorist attack according to his own confessions. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he's going to be charged as a terrorist, because that's what he is. And as I stated, I never actually tried to attach him to President Trump. When I started the video, Vincere, I don't know when you actually came into the stream, but when I started the video, I stated that I don't feel that President Trump is the cause of these terrorist attacks. And but him not calling these people out, and him not coming out and making an affirmative statement that these people are terrorists, that is emboldening these people to continue their agenda, because they feel as if they have someone in the mainstream that is in some ways supporting their actions. So it doesn't matter to me whether or not he was a Trump supporter. He's still carrying out these white supremacist terrorist attacks, and it would be in the best interest of the president to call these people out as for what they are. Okay, so I'm in the chat, and I'm looking at some more comments. And Forward Movement says, we don't even have to look abroad for white terror that is regular here in the States. How about the constant police brutality that is never labeled as terror? Oh boy, that was a loaded statement. That was a loaded comment. um, wow. Well, I mean, I guess it can all kind of be tied in together, Forward movements. Um, we've been dealing with terror from the police here in America for quite some time. But there's so much red tape involved in the police brutality cases. And what I mean by that is that someone is always going to try to point to some type of law that makes the things that the police that are engaging in terror against his own citizens. There's always going to be someone and some group of people that are going to attempt to try to find some type of law to make what they did justifiable. That is also, an issue that needs to be addressed as well. However, I really don't see a time in this country where the police will be labeled as terrorists. I don't really see that forthcoming. However, that is a separate discussion that we can have about how, the police are engaging in terror against the citizens with all the shootings and the police brutality that we have witnessed here almost on a daily basis in the United States. So that particular conversation is not completely irrelevant as it states to the terrorist attacks. However, I feel that that is a separate issue and a separate conversation that should be addressed as well. Okay, in the chat, Destiny says, with everything that is going on in the world, I strongly feel that this is designed by the government, etc. That's a good point, Destiny. And that is another end of the spectrum that we can address. A lot of people feel that a lot of this stuff that is going on is to get the things that are going on behind the scenes. A lot of people feel that these attacks and the things that are constantly being put before us in the media, they refer to these things as distractions. They feel that other things are going on behind the scenes that the people that would be referred to as the shadow government, the people that and so on and so forth. So Destiny, that is a very, very good point that you made. There's a lot of things that is going on in the world today that we, for the most part, the average person is not privy to what is happening. And I feel that a lot of this stuff is being thrown at us to overwhelm us, so that we're constantly, every week there's some big event going on. There's some major thing that is emerging, and it's very hard to keep track of everything that is going on. So yes, I do agree with you very strongly and to a certain extent on that. A lot of this stuff that is happening, it is just the tip of the iceberg of what is really going on. So I thank you for that comment, and I really appreciate that, your insight from that perspective. For a Movement says, if you are not a part of the solution, you are part of the problem. For a Movement, okay, For Movements, I totally agree with you on that. I feel that if we are not a part of the solution, then we are definitely part of the problem, and that is why I'm encouraging everyone here in the States and abroad, for us to start dealing with these instances of attacks and calling them out for what they are, and trying our best to get legislation pushed for these individuals to be deemed as terrorists. They are literally terrorists. They are doing a lot of this stuff in the name of racial prejudice and white supremacy. To me, those things are political agendas. Like I stated, a lot of these guys are stating that they are doing this to preserve the white race, which we all know is completely ridiculous, because there's no mass scale, um, there is no mass scale plot going on to eliminate white people. So that whole thing is just frivolous, is completely ridiculous, and these guys are doing this because they don't want a world to exist, that they don't recognize. We have to be honest about that. For so long, white supremacy has been an international order. And now that a lot of these guys are seeing those systems starting to crumble, they're seeing these systems starting to dissipate, and they're starting to see other individuals being able to amass some degree of power. They don't like that, and they're not being quiet about it. And they're using brute violence to get their message out there. So, this is something that we all have to deal with. We have to coexist with these people, unfortunately. So we have to do something about this. I'm back in the chat, and Destiny says, but it makes us live in fear and survival mode. Unfortunately, to a certain degree, yes. It does have people living in a constant state of fear and survival mode. And I feel as if that is a part of the plan. That is the times that we are living in, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with. And I want to encourage people to not so much look at these things and be fearful of them. This is the world that we live in, and I feel like if enough of us come together to speak out against this and to deal with this, enough of us that don't support the evils of the world that we are witnessing before our eyes, I feel that something can definitely be done about this. I'm not the type of person that particularly likes to live in fear. I feel that fear is to live in fear is a disservice, because it doesn't allow you to make the proper assessment of what is going on, and it doesn't really allow you to take the necessary action that you need to take in order to deal with the situations that we're up against. So I would like to encourage everyone to not live in fear. Just get your contingency plans in place, because we're up against some really pivotal times in history. We are witnessing the course of the world change right before our eyes. If anyone is familiar with the Aquarian age, that is what we're living in right now. And we're going to see a lot of things happen within a very short period of time. So let's not deal with these things in fear. Those of us that want to see the world become what it can actually be, I encourage us to come together and resist this, to fight back against this, because that is the only way that we will be able to, to sustain ourselves. Okay, so I'm back in the chat, and Forward Movement says, but can it be said that you along with the rest of the world are attacking the white males? Forward Movements always has Forward Movements always has a comment for me that kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. Okay. I don't see how calling out Terra and calling these people out for who they are could be seen and deemed as attacking white males. Calling someone out is not attacking them. Telling the truth about what someone is doing is not an attack on white males. As I stated before at the start of this video, this is not an attack on white people. This is not an attack on white males. This is calling out white male terror, because that is a reality. That is something that exists right here in the States and abroad. So calling these people out for what they are and who they are is not an attack on white males. And I know that people like to they like to state that white males are the most vulnerable right now. And that is a very weak and tired argument that I wish that we would put to rest, because no one is attacking white males. You're not seeing white males being stabbed in the neck on trains, as we witnessed a few months back with the young lady out in California that was stabbed in her neck in the name of white supremacy. There are no equivalents to this. I'm not seeing white males being attacked by anyone. If we're just going to be honest about it, white males are the ones that are carrying out these terror attacks against the rest of society. Okay, the chat is the chat is piling up with comments, and I'm going to do my best to get through them as quickly as possible, because I'm going to be ending the stream soon, so I want to make sure I get to everyone's comments. Destiny states that, well, she's actually responding to Forward Movements, and she states that white males are the people that are creating the crime, and the world has demasculated the black male and brought all the gay stuff into our community. Whoa, that's a loaded comment. These are topics that we would have to address in another live stream, but they are all relevant to the conversation, because, as Destiny was stating, white males are creating the crime and they are creating the terror in these instances. We cannot deny that. That is an indisputable fact, and to ignore that is creating more of an issue, in my opinion, because, as I stated, this is not being properly addressed. It is not being called out for what it really is. And until we do that, these individuals are going to continue to feel emboldened to do what they're doing. They're not receiving the proper pushback. And whether or not they support Trump or not is irrelevant, because we can't deny the fact that some Trump supporters are also engaging in these types of attacks as well. So the premise by which they are doing this, it doesn't really matter if they're Trump supporters or not. Lily J in the chat says, fear only cripples people. I strongly agree with that. And that is the main reason why I encourage people to not live in fear, because living in fear is not going to allow us to properly handle the issues that we're facing. Destiny says, and that is what they want. They want us to live in fear. Destiny also says they want us to also be crippled so they can control us. Hashtag Hitler. Wow, yes, Destiny, I completely agree with what you're saying. They want us to live in fear. And that is why there are so many things being thrown at us on a daily basis. There is so much going on right now. And it's kind of hard to keep up with everything that is happening because, like I said, there is just so much going on a daily basis here in the United States and internationally. But we have to do our best to pay attention to this and not for the purposes of being in fear of what's going on or trying to fearmonger and scare other people. But we have to be aware of what is happening around us. I don't think that it does us any good or serves us any justice to live in blissful ignorance. We have to be aware of our surroundings and what is happening so that we can properly address it. Because, like I stated, we have to live in the world with these people. They don't exist on a lonely island. They are a part of society here in the US and abroad. So we can't ignore this. This is something that needs to be called out, dealt with, and hopefully we can get it to a state where these groups are afraid to do what they are doing. And until we come together to call this out internationally, then it is going to continue to happen. Lily J says that is true, and anyone can be a terrorist. That is actual facts. Anyone can be a terrorist. But what we're seeing is that white males are not being identified as terrorists when they engage in things that other people will be called terrorists for. And that is why in the title, I made it specifically to say that white male denial of white male terror, because that is what we are witnessing. We are witnessing people deny terror that is being carried out by white males that have attached themselves to these white supremacist organizations and these hate groups. And some of these people, honestly, are not even attached to any of these groups. They just silently agree with what is going on. But if we don't do anything about the people that have decided to push themselves out to the mainstream, then it's just going to continue to allow the ones that are doing this quietly to feel that there is nothing wrong with it, and they're going to continue with it. Okay, I'm back in the chat, and it says, Vincier says, yes, white male terrorism does exist. But at the moment, we need to maintain perspective as the problem is small and insignificant. The shooter admits that his main goal was to push the racial divide. Okay, Vincier, I have to disagree with you on that. And the reason I'm going to disagree with you on that is because this this terrorism that we are witnessing, it is not small and insignificant at all. It is a real problem. It is something that that has been going on really and truly since the inception of the United States of America. It is not a small issue. People are able to hide in the closet and deny this, but it is not a small issue. It is a big issue. And what we're seeing and what we're witnessing is that people no longer want to hide. They're pushing themselves out to the mainstream for a reason. And as far as the racial divide, I kind of laugh, and I don't say that to be disrespectful to you, Vincier, but I kind of laugh when people say that people are pushing the racial divide. And my question and my response to that is, when has the racial divide ever? When has there been a time when there wasn't a racial divide? Is the actual thing that we need to address. We have never lived in this so-called this racial euphoria where everyone has always gotten along, where we haven't been witnessing this type of stuff going on and being carried out for hundreds of years. So I think that is naive. I would say it's naive to pretend that these people are dividing us racially. Um, do they have an agenda? Do they want to get a race war started? That's something that can be discussed and talked about. But as far as them creating a racial divide, I would say the racial divide has always existed. And it is up to us. If we don't want these things to continue to exist, it is up to us as the populace, as the population. I feel that the mass majority of us do outnumber these people, but they don't exist in a vacuum. They are a part of homegrown terrorist organizations, and these organizations are not as small as you would think that they are. So we need to first stop being in denial of what we're up against, because these organizations, they exist in larger numbers than we think. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read a few more comments before I end the live stream. I left off with Vincere's comment, and Vincere, I'm not saying the things that I'm saying to you to disrespect you, but I feel that to a certain extent you're being naive about what we're up against. For a Movement says, so if white males created this system, give me 1 second. The comments are coming in so fast, so I'm trying to backtrack here a little bit. For a Movement says, so if white males created this system, why would they not do everything in their power to keep it as such? And if you are trying to change the system created and maintained by a people, how is that not an attack on that people? Okay, Forward Movements. I don't feel that people that subscribe to the idea of white supremacy is going to change this system. And I'm not counting on those people to change the system. What I am doing is I'm speaking to the individuals that say that they don't want to live under this system and they don't want to have to deal with white supremacy and white male terror. Um, I'm speaking to those people because what I'm saying is if we don't want to live under this system, it is going to be up to us to get serious about changing it. There's been many, many years of commentary and people talking about it, but everybody just acts as if they don't know what to do. And it's going to come a time where we are going to have to get honest with ourselves and say to ourselves that we are not doing enough to come together and try to eliminate these systems that allow these individuals to come out here and attack people all under the name of white supremacy. I would never be as silly enough to actually think that the people that created the systems are going to change them. They're going to do everything in their power to maintain these systems. And I'm not naive to that fact. But what I would say is that those of us that don't want to live under this, no matter the race, creed, or content, we all need to come together to figure out ways to eliminate these problems and these systems that allow these people to do this. Okay, I'm backtracking in the chat so I can try to get to everyone's comments with here in the next few minutes. So Destiny states that if it had been a black male, his image would have been butchered and half of the allegations would have been false. But because this person is white, they did not do that to him. And I completely agree with that, Destiny. A lot of times we we witness in the media, and that's another thing that I was speaking of when I started the stream. A lot of times in the media, we see that we see a protection of these people, and that is another reason why they feel emboldened. As I stated, we see the protection of these people, and I, for the life of me, you know, I don't want to say I don't understand, but what I would say is that I really wish that the media would stop protecting these people in the degree of trying to protect their image and try to present them as some innocent person who just snapped or who just lost it. This man, Brenton, he stated by his own admission that he had been planning these attacks for 2 years. So he didn't just snap and decide to get up one day and go and carry out this attack against this mosque. This was something he had been planning for years. So that's another thing that we need to stop being naive about. These people are not just getting up one day saying, I'm going to go out here and carry out this attack because they're infuriated by something that took place. They're planning these are well orchestrated attacks. Okay, I'm gonna finish up the comments before we end. Destiny states they want to tip around the facts. Absolutely. People constantly want to tip around the facts. Oh boy, we have Philip M in the chat. He has a lot to say. He says, this was never your country. The fact remains that we should have never brought you here in the first place. Philip, that's something you're gonna have to summon your ancestors about, because we are witnessing the vestiges of their decisions, and also whose countries. And what I would like to say to Philip is, whose country was it? Because the last time I checked, Europe is not right here in the United States. Europe is somewhere out there across the world. So this country was never yours either, Philip. So if you could if you could educate me on the time where this land was actually originally inhabited by Europeans, you can go ahead and put that in the chat and educate us on that. I don't think you're going to find that, but if you can go ahead and post it. Okay. I'm trying to keep I'm trying to keep track of these comments because boy, some people are really coming out the woodwork tonight with their racist views. Vincere says, why did you choose to use firearms? I chose firearms for the effect it would have on social discourse, the extra media coverage they would provide, and the effect it could have on the police of the United States and thereby the political situation of the world. Okay, Vincere, is that something that was from the manifesto? I read a little bit of it. I didn't read the whole thing. So are you referring to something that was in the manifesto? Okay, Vincere says yes. Okay, so that kind of proves my point, Vincere, that that these individuals, they're not lone wolves when they're not mentally ill. They know exactly what they're doing. They're planning these things out to the T. And I'm not one of those people that are looking at this and buying into the narrative that that this is going to start a race war. As I stated, for Black people in particular, we've always been in a race war, if we're just going to be honest about it, because what happened to us and what happened to our ancestors could be seen as a form of war. So I would argue that for someone such as myself, I've always been a victim of a war that was waged against my ancestors. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the comments because I need to end this live soon. I think that this topic is triggering a lot of people. But, that's a good thing because, like I stated, we need to be having these discussions, and beyond discussing these things, we need to be coming up with ways to seriously deal with these issues. Um, Destiny says, give me 1 second here. Destiny says, we never asked to come here. We were brought here against our will. And Philip says, as I said, you should have never been brought here in the first place. You didn't answer the question, how is this not an attack on the people who created the system you're looking to dismantle? Okay, I think Philip is referring to the question that Forum Movements posed, that how is this not an attack on the people that created the system? And what I would say to that is, the system that you created, from the beginning of time, you involved other people in the system. I don't know if you're overlooking 400 years of slavery, well, 400 years of racist terrorism against Black people. I don't know if you're overlooking that, Philip. You are asking people that were brought here against their will to somehow just disappear. And that is completely ridiculous because when you strip someone of their culture, land, and resources, you don't get to turn around and tell them to go back where they came from, because many of us don't know where we came from. So that's one thing that I'm going to say in response to that. Also, it is not an attack on the system because, as you can see, the system is changing over time to the degree that white people, white males in particular, since they're being the most vocal about it, things are changing. And as I stated before, this is the issue. These people do not believe in diversity, and they don't want to see this system crumble. And what I would say to that is, tough. That would be my response to that. Tough. You don't get to steal and pillage and think that one day that system is not going to come crumbling down. I think it's very naive of people to think that we're all here existing on this land together, and somehow people are just going to disappear because you don't want them here, or you don't want them to exist in this system that you created. I use that term very loosely because a lot of these things, a lot of the reason why this system even exists in the first place is because of terror, if we're going to be honest. So you can try to want to hold on to that system for as long as you want to, but eventually is going to dissipate because it was created through evilness. And anything that any foundation that is created on things such as terror, pillaging, theft, murder, those systems are destined to fail. So I hope that answered the question for you, Philip. Okay. Philip says, I'm a cherry picker. I think he might be talking to Vincere. I'm not sure. He says, you're a cherry picker, Vincere. Okay, yeah, he's talking to Vincere. Picking what you want, wilts discarding the history of this country. Diversity is nothing more than slang for less white people. And there you have it. I think Philip just proved my point again about what I said about diversity meaning less white people. Philip, there's an entire continent that exists with many white countries called Europe. You may want to explore going to Europe if you want to go to an all-white country. The United States is no longer an all-white country, and quite honestly, it never was. So being naive to the fact that this country was never an all-white country is the reason why so many people are bumping their heads up against the wall right now because they don't like what they're seeing. And, as I stated, tough, you know, you don't have to like it, but it's what it is. Excuse me. Vincere says, Philip, my position is if you are a U.S. citizen, then welcome. However, don't get it twisted. We are Americans first, and you should never put race in front of the term. I can agree with that to a certain extent. If we're gonna all be here in America, then we can identify with America to some degree. Um, however, I will never I will never deny my African heritage. That is something that I won't do. Okay. Philip is in the chat and he seems to be very upset by what I'm saying, and that's fine. You know, you can disagree with me. I'm not gonna block you or kick you out of the chat. I want discourse. I want people to disagree. Um, okay, Philip says, I promise you, if you keep insisting that we go back to Europe, you won't like the response from us. Okay, I don't know if that's supposed to be some type of threat. um, and what I will say to that is that I'm not soliciting for anyone to go back to Europe, but by your own admission, you said you want to exist in a society that is primarily white, and you don't like the fact that America is no longer in all, I guess what you would like to refer to as an all white nation. As I already stated to you, it never was. Because when your ancestors decided that they were going to carry people along with them, what did they think were going to happen to those people after the institution of slavery ended? Did they think they were going to just disappear? So, you know, it's very silly for you to have that type of perspective on it. And yes, as I stated, there are many white only countries in Europe, or primarily white. So if you don't want to be in a society which there is diversity, then that would be the best thing for you to do. I don't understand what's so hard about understanding what I'm saying. If you don't want to be in a diverse nation, then America may not be the place for you. And that is simply just the reality of the situation. Okay, Miss Arquay is in the chat and she says, when was America all white? Goodbye. I agree with that. There was never a time when America was all white. So I don't even understand why that narrative is being pushed. America was never an all white nation. And I feel it's very disingenuous for people to parrot that sentiment because it is actually inaccurate. And if we're just going to be honest about the situation, maybe I'll discuss this in a separate video because this stream has gone a little bit longer than I anticipated. But I'm gonna have to continue this conversation because I think people like Philip, they're not really aware of the history of America. And I would think that, you know, I think that it would serve you some great justice to study American history a little bit more and study what existed in America before it was referred to as America. I'll bring that information in another live stream because I feel this was a very good discussion tonight. I think it blew the lid off of a lot of things that people don't want to address, and that is the main purpose of my channel, to discuss things that people don't want to discuss and things that people don't want to address. A lot of people are just sitting here living in denial, and that's something that has to stop. You know, the world is changing whether people like it or not. Like I said, this age that we are coming into right now, a lot of these people that don't want to get with the times, they're going to have a hard time dealing with the world that we are emerging into. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and also tap the notification bell so that you'll receive updates from when we're going live. And what I'm going to start doing is throughout the week, I'll be posting a few videos. They won't be live streams, but I see that there's a lot that people want to talk about. So I'm going to start posting videos throughout the week on some of the issues that need to be addressed. Also, if you're not following me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Shelly Speaks 1. Also on Facebook, Shelly Speaks. And if there's anything that you would particularly like for me to discuss, you can send me an email at shellyspeakstruth@gmail.com. I would love for everyone to, email me about the show. Let me know what you thought of it. Also, if you have anything that you would like to discuss, you can go ahead and email me a topic, and I will go ahead and address that in a live stream. Also, I am working on that Instagram page that people have been asking me to create, so I will be creating that as well. Once again, I want to thank everyone for watching, and have a good night.